How you doing? Welcome to the Leadership Talk Show. I'm Victor Vogel. I'll be your host this evening. Um, we only have really two rules that we apply here on the talk show, and those rules are: one, we don't mention specific names of people or specific companies that we might describe behaviors or talk about in case you join the show. If you join the show, you're going to be probably put into a holding area. And then as I pre-screen you a little bit, we'll bring you on board. If you happen to come on board during the presentation, just hang on a little bit. After the presentation's over, I'll bring you in and you're welcome to join me live. And we'll do a whole lot of talking during that period of time about leadership success. Uh, that's our topic this evening: leadership success. And what does that mean? How do people view leadership success? It's interesting. I was just having a conversation with a few folks about what that means. And it really means a lot of different things to a lot of different people, depending on the circumstances they're in and all of those situations. So, uh, I will put up my little being able to recognize if somebody jumps on board and decides to come in on the show with me, then they're welcome to talk about leadership. Interesting topic, something I'm not sure a lot of people are grasping today in terms of what it takes to actually be a leader out there. But anyway, we're going to go through several slides and some information about leadership, and then we'll see if there's anybody that shows up who might want to talk about it on the show. You're certainly welcome. If you received an invitation, all you have to do is put that in your URL. It's a quick download for the Zoom, and I recommend you download the Zoom app. It's really safe, it's secure. And in addition to that, it provides you a lot of opportunity to do various things if you're a participant to get into the show. But that's the only way you can get in and participate with me and watch a show and watch it live. Otherwise, you're going to see it on YouTube, Facebook, Blogger, and a bunch of other repostings I do after the show is over. So, but that's okay. If we don't have anybody, we're still going to really have some good information about leadership success. What does that mean when you say leadership success? What does that mean? And how does it impact you as a leader or a future leader if you want to be a future leader down the road? I'm pretty much into this program because I'm seeing a lot of void in leadership out there. So, and by that I mean leadership that really makes a difference for everybody down the road. So we'll take a look at that. I've got my coffee here. Hold on one second. I'll get some of that. You get your coffee or your favorite drink or whatever you have out there. And let's share my screen here a minute with you. Okay. And here we go. And let's get over here and get started. Okay, now here we go. Got that set. Let's see. There we go. I'll put me up here so you can kind of get a visual of me talking. Sometimes that's good, sometimes it's bad, but for the most part, I like to put it up there so people can see what I'm saying. So the question I have is, and have always had for a long time, and that is what determines leadership success? So let's talk about that a little bit. Sometimes it's from the perspective, and when I ask people this question, I say, where do you determine your leadership success? And it really is broken down into two areas. Sometimes it's the external perspective, what other people think of you in terms of a leader. And then in other times, it's internal, what people really sense or believe about themselves as a leader. So I found that very interesting from the perspective of where does leadership success reside? Now, what we have covered here is a whole host of topics up to this point that really have a significant impact on this idea of what is success as leadership. We've talked about ethics and morals in leadership, and culture, and belief systems, and power bases, the power that is used in leadership power bases. We talked about roles that leadership plays, the directive role and the collegial or collaborative roles. We talked about communication and trust as a very important aspect of leadership. In other words, communication is really the vehicle whereby trust is established. And we went through a model of communication, and we talked about trust and what's involved in trust. You need to come back and visit these. You can visit them on the Apple podcast that I have, which will be in the link in this video. You can go back and look at any of these particular presentations and glean a lot of information. We talk about how people handle conflict and conflict management, how people should look at developing themselves as a leader, how they should approach that. And we talked about actually branding your leadership. What are you saying to other people in terms of who you are as a leader and what you are all about? So tonight, what we're talking about is defining success for leadership. What is leadership success? I went a little too fast here. I did a poll. Interestingly enough, I did a poll uh, where we actually did a survey on Facebook. And sorry, I had to correct a little something up here in terms of the top, but we did a Facebook poll. And it's a very unscientific poll, but it actually represents a lot of about how people feel. This is kind of how I expected the poll to turn out, to be honest with you. And it was, what is leadership success dependent on? The question I asked was, is success as a leader depending on external perceptions or your internal feelings about success? And I asked people to pick only one of those two options and not kind of split the difference between the two of them. And the reason I did that is for years and years in doing research, I realized, and this is pretty much a scientifically defined process, and that is when you want to get to somebody's core feelings, you limit the amount of options they have to respond. So we went to one, either external or internal. And we didn't allow any option in between those two. And really what that does is get at your core sense of how you really feel about what leadership success is dependent upon. So that's how we did that. And we got about like 89 respondents, which is pretty good, really, for a Facebook poll. It was only up for 2 days. And what we found here is about 55% of the people responded to the survey saying that their primarily leadership success depends on what others or outside sources feel about your leadership, as opposed to the inside sources of your leadership. In other words, your internal belief that you're doing well and that you're successful and that you're satisfied with your leadership behavior. So I thought it'd be beneficial for us tonight. And again, if you decide to join the program, just hop on in there and you'll be put into a little holding category. And then once I realize, I recognize you're there and I realize you may have your headphones plugged in, and so we don't have any audio feedback, and you're ready to go live video, then I can bring you on and you can be part of this presentation and part of the discussion about this, which would be really great. I'd love to have some people do that if you're out there. Okay. But we can see that about 55% of the respondents said that, their leadership success depending upon what others or other factors outside of themselves affected their perception of leadership success, where 45% of people felt like things that were driving you internally within yourself affected your leadership success. So let's go ahead and take a look at that a little deeper. Let's start with external. Here are the kinds of things that most people look at when they talk about external leadership success, where things depend on what other people see or perceive in terms of your leadership. And one of them is money. How much money you make, how much power you might have as an individual, perceived in terms of your ability to do harm versus someone else doing harm to you. Fame, your sense of recognition, etc., and focus on what others want them to be. So people are very concerned about their image and what other people think about them. Their title. So a lot of times your title determines what people believe is success. For example, if you're a CEO or you're a vice president or you're an executive of some sort, those are the kind of the president, the CEO, COO, whatever, those kinds of titles tend to provide a sense of external success to people, just a title, just the position they hold. Things like recognition. So if you get the Nobel Peace Prize, if you're recognized by in the military by certain medals for valor, there's a lot of recognition out there. If you get posted in the newspaper, if you're on TV a lot, those kinds of things often denote to people that you are a successful leader in your field or whatever. Salary levels, in other words, if you're a GS7 versus a GS18, there's a pay grade differentiation that indicates or is often associated with success. It's not necessarily true in terms of success, but people associate the fact that if you made it up to the pay grade level, you must have had some sort of success in your life. Bonuses, people who receive higher bonuses than other large bonuses are perceived as being successful. This is often seen in the stock market arena, the banking industry, and places that rely more on bonuses than they do base salaries to establish recognition or significance or success in leadership. So what the leader can get out of the position, in other words, when a person looks at leadership from the success of leadership from a personal perspective, they're really looking at, what's in it for me. And if I don't see a lot of something in it for me here, then I will switch companies or I will switch jobs or I'll do whatever it takes. So I have a better, either, a lot of these other things that we've already talked about, either have a better salary level, have a better title, I'm getting more fame, more TV time, or whatever it is. I will move that position to gain that increase. So when I look at a leadership position, really, what is in it for me from an external perspective, from a money perspective, from a power perspective, from a fame perspective, or whatever it might be, versus the internal view. Now, the internal view is more focused on a goal driven individual. What's really important to you that drives you to be a leader, that makes you want to do something that's different, better, more effective, that contributes something out there. So, what is really important to you that drives you to be a leader versus, say, just a technical person or a mechanic or whatever it might be? To think beyond yourself and determine how your leadership can advance others or causes. An internally focused individual about leadership is not just worried about themselves, they're worried about everybody else around them, their subordinates, their bosses, their company, everybody else. How am I going to positively impact everyone else as a leader? So when people think of success of a leader, they think of that. There are a lot of leaders in this world who were not rich. I think of Martin Luther King, Mahatma Gandhi, just a whole host of people out there. Jesus Christ was not rich, but he's had the longest singular impact and the most driving force over 2,000 years than anybody else who ever walked the planet of this earth. So think about that. He was internally driven. He had a cause that he was focused on that was beyond money, power, fame, or recognition. He wasn't seeking that kind of stuff. This was an internally driven desire that Christ had. And this is true about Martin Luther King and other people who have come on the scene, who have been people who have made significant changes and contributions to the world, not because they were selecting or deciding they wanted to be, quote, a leader. It's almost organically happening. It's like it came upon them and they just assumed that responsibility. It could be a series of incidents, a situation, a moment in time, and they stepped up to the occasion and it just mushroomed. So a lot of leadership is not necessarily planned from that standpoint when you think about it. I don't think Bill Gates or Steve Jobs or any of those people ever envisioned themselves being in the position that they were in as heads of corporations. Okay. So yeah, I'm not sure they were driven by all of this money, power, and fame. I think they were driven by an ideal, a cause, or a purpose, and all of this other stuff happened because of that. So let's just think about it that way. The leadership style reflects who the person is, what their personality, their emotional stability, their humanity is all reflected in how they behave as a leader. So when people are thinking about leadership from an internal perspective, they're not so concerned about how people think about money, their title they have, or how many awards they've received, or how much money they make, or any of that stuff. They're pretty much perceived as, how do you see me as a person? How do you feel about me And how do you think I represent humanity that's setting out there? A true leader wants their leadership to reflect what they want to become. Okay. Now, there are leaders out there who have been highly effective leaders and have done tremendous damage to the world. Adolf Hitler comes to mind right off the top of the head. There's a man that created the Second World War, killed millions and millions of people, but he knew who he wanted to become, and he became that person. So you can't short his leadership. What you can short is his ethics and his morality, which is one of the topic areas we discovered along this path to successful leadership. So there you go. So, a lot depends upon who you want to be and who you want to become as a leader. Some people want to become this person over here who's highly externally motivated. They want the power, the fame, the recognition that goes with being a leader. You might even point to our current president, Donald Trump, when we think about those characteristics. Is he thinking about these internally driven things where he can be helpful and contribute and change and add to creativity and innovation and change? Or is he thinking about fame and power and recognition and how much money he can make and those kinds of things? So there's a kind of comparison about what we mean about a true leader wants their leadership to reflect what they want to become down the road. So, what value the leader can add to others and themselves is extremely important when you think internally about a leadership success. In other words, I can tell you over the years, I have spent a lot of years developing leaders. I've had a lot of people working for me who are now highly effective leaders and much better at it than I was. Okay. But they worked for me. And I had a significant role, or at least a role, in molding and shaping who they could possibly become down the road. And so, although I don't look for any kind of recognition for that, I have an internal self satisfaction that I know from these people, from talking to them and being around them and watching them over the years. I know I had some sort of influence over their success at becoming a leader. And leadership, then, under an internal perspective, has to align with a person's core values and their belief system and what's important to them. I think when you think about this, leadership is critical. It's critical from the perspective that you have to have a real sense of who you are, what you want to be, and how you want to get there. Okay. And depending on the choices you make will depend on whether you end up more on that external side. And remember, the survey showed about 55% of the people are looking at these external factors as success factors versus 45% that were looking at the internal factors. But the fact that they are that close is interesting. It says something. And you have to really take a look at things. Now, there's some comments that came in with those, by the way, and, about the fact that in order to gain the external recognition and titles you want and more money and those kinds of things, that people look for how you as a leader understand who you are and what you want to bring. And we said that in branding. We said, if you understand the internal aspects of leadership success, it will help brand yourself so that when you look at these external factors over here, money, power, fame, title, recognition, uh, that these things can be part of the equation, but they're not the things that drive you. They're not the thing. If none of these ever happened and you were successful as a leader in your mind because you've done everything you could do to help someone else, to improve people, to make things happen that were different, to create different scenarios, etc., and none of that equated to money or power or fame or recognition, you still did this. Now you think about, I will take something like a SEAL team. A SEAL team does nothing in terms of their operations from an external. They're not seeking money, they're not seeking fame, they're not seeking power, they're not seeking recognition. Everything is driven from trying to help others, trying to be contribute to the overall success of the organization, in our case, the country. These internally driven factors on a SEAL team uh, often are not recognized in the external side of the world because of their confidentiality, because of what they do. But they do them, and you would find that they do them exceptionally well in any special operations unit. So there's an example of kind of the comparison of internal and external leadership success. But the vast majority of it, I think, although even the external people say they are focused on these things, most of them, if they had the option to choose something other than internal, external, would probably include a lot of internal factors in their leadership side of the factor. But the fact that they were choosing external says that this has a powerful influence on us in America today. Okay, and I don't think this went outside of America. The poll didn't. So it says something about who we are and what we're about in America today from a leadership success idea concept. So when you're defining your leadership success, how do you go about working on this stuff where you can kind of put the two concepts of external and internal, or now I call it personal leadership success, together in a way that they work for everybody who's out there? And that can happen. So let's start with the external side. You want to determine what roles support who you want to be. If you get into a role, a leadership role that doesn't make you feel good about who you are as a leader and what you can contribute, you will be in a very, very uncomfortable position and possibly for a long time. So you need to think about this area. You need to understand enough about yourself over here to determine the role that really supports who you want to be. You have to align your lifestyle with your core values and your belief systems. You have to understand that if not making a lot of money is not on your agenda in terms of who you want to be, but contributing more to the world and what can change, you might find yourself living a more sparse life than you would if you chose to run a multi-billion-dollar international corporation. You've got to determine whether opportunities allow you to become who you want to be and what you stand for as a leader. So think about this. Who do you want to be? What do you really want to stand for? And what role or position out there will allow me to showcase this to the world? That's what you have to look at when you're looking at a job. Now, when jobs are sparse, you don't always have those great choices if you have to earn a living. But if jobs are not sparse and you have the opportunity to pick and choose, this is a question you want to ask yourself. or a statement you want to ask yourself. Determine whether opportunities allow you to become who you want to be and what you stand for as a leader. Evaluate how a leadership role can contribute to others who you lead and the organization you serve. Both have to be satisfied when you accept a leadership role. If you're working for somebody else, if you want to be a leader within an organization, you have to fit within that organization. You have to know that the values and the purposes and the core belief systems that you have are the same kinds of values and systems that go into another organization. Now, if they're not, and your purpose is to change that organization's cores and value systems, you need to really to be more in line with what you want. You need to be very much aware of the fact that you are going to be in an extreme conflict mode on a continual basis. And what do I mean by that? We can look at Donald Trump as president of the United States right now. He, in fact, wants and was elected on the idea of changing our government. Now, let's think about that a minute. The Constitution of the United States was set up to have three powers counterbalancing each other: the judicial, the congressional, and the executive branches of government. Each has the checks and balances on the other. Each does not have more power over the other. Okay? When you think about this, and you think about being charged as a business executive to go in and change a government concept, the likelihood that that is going to happen is going to be very, very slim. Okay? You can't go in and take a business concept and apply it to something that has a 200-year constitutional history and expect to do that in a way that isn't extremely controversial and create lots of issues. And that's what we're experiencing today in our government leadership role. We saw it today when it comes to immigration. We've seen it all along since, we've seen it through not just Trump. We've seen it through a lot of presidents, okay? So we can't just lay this on Trump. This is about, although his might be more magnified because of who he is and what he's trying to do that is so contrary to our constitutional setup, it's nearly impossible. It's nearly impossible. It was a death sentence to him to send him in there to try to make the changes. It's just not a very acceptable process. So you have to really understand this kind of stuff as a leader before you step into the role. Otherwise, you might find yourself in a very, very difficult situation. So as we go through this, you're seeing what kinds of things you have to think about from an external perspective to be successful as a leader. Does the leadership role allow you the opportunity and the flexibility to reach your vision and goals as a leader? If you're going to get into a leadership position, you have to know yourself well enough to be able to answer that question. So now we come up to the personal side that will help you understand more about responding to the external questions we have over here. And that is, are you clear about your core values and to what extent you will go to live by those core values and beliefs? Because you're going to be challenged to change who you are and what you're about if your core values are significantly different than the role you're about to step into. I'm just saying you need to understand the role you're going to step into, folks. Is your contribution as a leader clear in your mind? What is it that you know you're going to end up with when you're done? When you shake your hands off and you step out of that role, you can look back at it and say, yeah, I knew what I was going to contribute and change and what would happen for me as a leader. And I was very clear about that, and it happened, or it didn't happen. Okay? Are you prepared to walk away from your leadership role if it violates your core beliefs and value systems? If you are in an organization where you are not fitting in because of your core beliefs and your core values, and you're in a leadership role and you're struggling to make that change in corporations more aligned with what you want, uh, this could be a devastating uh, problem for you. It's going to be one of those situations where you almost, it's almost impossible for you to make that change. And the result is you are not going to walk away as a successful leader. And I've seen a lot of leaders leave organizations or be pushed out of organizations because of this issue. Are you prepared? Are you prepared to defend your leadership values when confronted by others with greater power than you are? Are you prepared to stand up? We are seeing this in our own government today, where a leader who who basically has established himself as the government and power base out there, and we are seeing people will not stand up to him. They're fearful of him, that he has a coercive power base as president, and they're fearful to say anything about his wrongness of his approach because of his potential for harming their election potential. So the question is, will you do anything to live in that environment? Or are you prepared to defend your values and stand up for them, even if it means losing your role or your job? That's a question you have to answer that fits whether you're going to make these external interfaces effectively or not. Will you be able to stand in front of any size group and clearly articulate your goals and beliefs as a leader in just a few words? In other words, are you comfortable enough with who you are and what you want people to see you as a leader and what you want to accomplish and what you're focused on and what your values stand for, to be able to summarize that in just a few words that will help people understand where you're coming from? And finally, do you have a well-defined leadership brand? That's what we talked about branding last time. This is the importance of branding. It is about your success. It is a thing. This is important for you to understand. So as you brand yourself, you're capable of going out there and sending the signal about who you are, what you believe as a leader, and what you see that you can contribute and accomplish as a leader. And it's very clear, not just to the leadership of the organization, but everyone else out there who sees you as a leader, whether they're your employees, whether you're vendors, whether they're your associates, your bosses, whoever that might be. It's very clear who you are and what you are about and why you are there as a leader. So, whether you're a military officer, whether you're a civil rights leader, a CEO, of a or a board of directors member, whether you're a pastor in a small local church, or whether you're a world leader, what you need to understand is whatever the role, you make the leader. Now, that's important for you to understand. It's important for you to know you are the difference. And that's why you have to take time. That's why you have to understand yourself. That's why you have to be significant in your leadership role. You really, really need to know what that's about. Okay, so it's important for you to become a significant leader. It's important for you to assume a leadership role. You understand who you are. You understand what you're about. You understand the roles that will you'll be able to have significant impact in. That can lead to significant leadership success down the road. And that's important for you. That's what you need to know about leadership. So, we're about 42 minutes into the program. It's a pretty long program, but again, this is important for you to know and understand. If you're interested in being a successful leader, you need to check back through the series in this program, become familiar, and use those tools that were presented to help you understand a little more how that impacts you and defines you as a leader. Because if you define yourself as a leader, you can be a successful leader. You'll be able to pick the right roles that you can be successful in. You'll be able to relate to your subordinates, your peers, your bosses, and become a successful leader down the road. So those are things that you need to understand about leadership. If there's somebody on the air that wants to join, you're certainly welcome to come in here and join us. Be successful in that area. I'll be glad to, would love to talk with you about those. You're welcome to hop in here in a minute. Don't have a lot going on right now, so I don't have many people who are actually on the air here. So I will kind of close this program out then and tell you that the next thing we're going to talk about is another important aspect about leadership, and that is, where is it going in the future? Are leaders going to be important? Think about this. A vast majority of manufacturing, the service industry, the retail industry have all fallen prey to technology. The more technology grasps this and minimizes the human interaction, the less leadership is needed in the organization. So there are a lot of leadership roles, from crew leaders to supervisors to managers to directors to area regional directors to vice presidents to professional executive positions like chief operating officer and all those positions, and CEO, even CEO positions down the road are going to be impacted by this concept of what's the future have in store for leadership. So that's next week. Until then, I'm Victor Vogel. This is the Leadership Talk Show. Have a good evening. I'll see you next Wednesday night where we talk about what is the future of leadership. Good evening.